Hi and welcome to this Mindfulness Starter webinar in English. And welcome to this beautiful space of Cultural Center in Bemowo. And I have to tell you that I feel really privileged to be in this space, this green space, full of plants. And I actually kind of feel a really good energy of this place, and having life happening behind me, the world, the street happening, and I suppose we can stay a little bit in this space, stay still, and spend this time talking a little bit of mindfulness, but also practicing mindfulness, because as the title of the webinar says, it's Mindfulness Starter, so we're going to start some practice. And I would like to invite you to start with setting yourself a little bit. We're going to spend around more or less 75 minutes together. So it would be good to have maybe some intention of taking care of yourself, of spending and treating this time as kind of a valuable time. Maybe so-called hashtag me time, okay? So let's start with finding space that's quiet, somewhere that maybe nobody will be distracting you, disturbing you. And if it's not possible, then maybe using headphones for this webinar, for this time of our practice today. And you can also think of maybe some comfortable clothes and setting yourself comfortable, so treating and taking care of yourself. And it's quite warm today in Warsaw, but maybe you need a blanket, something warm to cover yourself. And also, because it's 75 minutes, then maybe having a snack or water will be also kind of supporting you and helping you to have pleasure. And also, if you can, try to think of this time as, this time you want to focus and kind of give your time, your attention to today's webinar. So maybe if you're using computer and you're watching this webinar via computer, then maybe minimizing or closing all windows that can be distracting to you, and keeping only the window of the live. And or also, if you maybe have a phone next to you, then maybe putting your phone a little bit away from you, so it's not in your reach, right? And you don't get distracted by the messages or by the phone calls. And also, if you kind of have this need, you can take care of yourself and of your body. So maybe using a cushion or a pillow to support your back, sitting somewhere comfortably on a chair, on the armchair, floor, maybe even bed. And we're going to start this hashtag me time with a short practice. I'm going to ring the bell to signal the beginning of the practice. And if you wish, you may want to close your eyes and sit wherever you are sitting. And maybe lengthen your spine a little bit, straighten your spine. And if you don't want to keep your eyes closed for some reason, then maybe just soften your gaze, relax your gaze, and start slowly and peacefully with connecting with your breath. noticing your breath. Noticing each of the in-breaths, and then noticing when the air is leaving your body, and then noticing each of the out-breaths. And maybe even noticing the sound of your breath, if it's possible, if it's available for you. And stay with your breath, observing your breath for a little bit longer, for a couple of more breaths. And like there's nothing else to do now, just breathe. And nowhere else to be now, just be here. And nowhere else to go, just arrive here in this very precious moment of the presence. And if you wish, you may want to ask yourself, how am I feeling today? How am I today, actually? And just kind of saying what answers appear in your mind, what answers appear in you. And then also maybe asking yourself, what brings me here? What brings me to this webinar? What brings me to mindfulness? And stay with what appears in you, what arrives in you for a little bit longer. Just see what happens. And slowly, when you hear again the sound of the bell, just finish the practice and now open your eyes. So if you can breathe, then you can possibly do mindfulness. I'm Magdalena Grygolec, and I'm actually really happy because it's probably your very first practice of mindfulness today, or maybe one of the first practices, and this is beautiful, this is great, that you're actually trying and giving yourself this chance. And I imagine that if you are here, there are some reasons for that. That something brings you to this webinar, maybe out of curiosity, or maybe that you feel that you need mindfulness for some reasons known for you. And also, if you are here maybe by complete coincidence, so you've been just kind of scrolling, Facebook feed, and you got into the Bemowski Cultural Center fan page, and then you saw me, and you thought, oh, that maybe looks interesting, and you decided to stay here, then that also might be a reason for the universe to bring you here. And I kind of want to invite you to hang in with me for a little bit and stay and see what happens. And I also already see that there are some people observing, so it's really nice to see you observing. If you want to say hello in the comments below, that would be really lovely, that would be beautiful. Maybe if you want to say why you're here, what brings you here, then please comment. And also, if you have any questions, then please write in the comment section, and at the end of the webinar, I will try to do my best to answer them. Okay, so after this little info, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about my story, how I got into mindfulness. And it actually all started with yoga, my interest in yoga. It was I was in my late, I suppose, teens, early 20s, and I got into yoga classes, and I really got interested into it. But it was, 20s, crazy roaring 20s of my life, so I kind of had this on and off relationship with yoga. But thanks to the beautiful and amazing teachers that I had on my path, my life path, I also learned and practiced pranayama and meditation. So they kind of inspired me into practicing and practicing mindfulness. And what I kind of started to notice with mindfulness, that it started to have an impact, a positive impact on my life, and it actually started to change my life very gradually and very slowly, but it did. And I also could see what happened to me when I did not practice, or I had this kind of, periods that I did not have time. And because I also have the background in education, I'm an English teacher, and I've also worked as a academic director of studies, both in Poland and the UK. Having this background in teaching and education kind of made it very natural for me to also get into mindfulness teaching and become a mindfulness teacher, and to start kind of spreading the idea of mindfulness and teaching people mindfulness. And I'm a certified teacher for kids and for teens. I've been certified with this British organization called Youth Mindfulness. And I'm also an MBSR teacher, a certified MBSR teacher. This is if you've ever heard, this 8-week mindfulness-based courses, and MBSR stands for Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Course. So what I do now, I'm based in Warsaw, and I teach both regular and seasonal classes, mindfulness workshops, and also I teach at schools in Warsaw. I teach mindfulness at schools in Warsaw. And what I like to say, actually, is that at present, I'm mostly mum, and I'm mostly wife of my husband, because my son is 2 years old, and I decided that I want to be with him. So it's kind of like I teach and I do work, but just a little bit. Most of my time I spent being with my son. So this is a little bit about me, and if you're interested a little bit more about mindfulness, or want to know a little bit more about me, or know about the courses, classes, workshops I teach, you can visit my website. You can see it there. It's MindLove. And so what we're going to do today, what will you hear and learn today is a little bit about mindfulness, and actually what mindfulness is, okay? I'm also going to talk a little bit about the science behind mindfulness, because mindfulness is actually quite well backed up by science, by scientific research and investigation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how it can impact your lives, how it can possibly impact your lives when you practice regularly. I want to tell you a little bit about why sometimes it's difficult to set the practice, right? To take up any actually practice or hobby, and what kind of obstacles, difficulties you may have, or maybe you've already have had and it will resonate with you. So you've been kind of starting mindfulness practice, going to classes, but never really set or got onto, regular practice. And the last, maybe not least, I will tell you what you can do maybe to start practice. Maybe a little bit inspirational content here. So let's start with kind of saying, and just checking the time, so I want to kind of be, on time with things. I kind of like to ask in my classes, either they're the beginners, so people who have never tried, and tasted mindfulness, or people who have, practiced for some time or even for a long time, what is mindfulness for them? And I like to ask this question because what I hear and what people say are this amazing, things, and this how they understand mindfulness it's in a very unique way. But for today's webinar, I thought we're going to have kind of like a working definition of mindfulness, and this is the definition coined by the pioneer of mindfulness, a person who brought the concept, the idea of mindfulness from the Eastern traditions into the secular Western world. And his name is Jon Kabat-Zinn, and he's been teaching and dealing with mindfulness for the last, over 40 years. And one of his definitions, because he also has a couple of definitions of mindfulness, one of his definitions is that mindfulness is the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. And right, I suppose it is, it sounds perfectly understandable, right? Anyone can get that. So paying attention, right, we kind of all know how to do it, how to direct our attention, and on purpose, right, that's quite clear. Then in the present moment, right, it might get a little bit harder to be in this present moment, but we kind of all understand the concept of past, of present, and of future. And last, non-judgmentally, right? And this is kind of like, oh, okay, Magda, so I stop judging, right? I will stop just judging things and people or something. And it's like, it's a little bit misleading, because when you look into your mind and how the mind is kind of working, you will notice, if you observe your mind, you will notice that we are judging almost everything. We're judging a lot. And we have opinions on almost everything, on ourselves, on the world, outside world, on friends, on family, and so on and so on. And in mindfulness, what it is, we do not try to kind of run away from this judging or try to stop it or control it. What we do is actually we try to observe the judging mind. And I want to stay here with the topic of awareness for a little bit more, because awareness is, and I'm going to actually repeat something what Jon Kabat-Zinn teaches, and so I'm going to support my back with what he says a little bit. And he says that, and I do really agree with him, that awareness is something that is quite unrecognized in our world, especially in our modern world. And it's not appreciated. And we, pay a lot of attention in our society, in our education. We pay a lot of attention to knowledge, to thinking, especially maybe analytical thinking or critical thinking. But what we kind of leave out from this, our focus and attention, is the awareness. And the awareness is, if you think about this for a second, is something bigger than knowledge or thinking, because the awareness is, and this is a very unique thing for human beings. So the awareness is being aware of my thoughts and of my thinking process. And we can call the awareness a gift that we have, human beings. And it's something that sometimes in kind of mindfulness world, we talk about going to this gym, the mind gym, and exercising, right? The mind, or exercising this, like muscles we exercise, exercising the muscle of awareness. But I think, again, this is not exactly right, because the awareness is something that we have inside us. And if we do, then what we have to, and what we can do, is actually trying to practice the access to awareness, trying to cultivate the access to the awareness. So continuing with the topic of the mindfulness and wandering mind, and I would like to tell you about a study, not one study, but a study that was conducted, actually thanks to kind of development of smartphones. So in the study, developed a smartphone technology that samples people's thoughts, feelings, and actions. And it was possible because of the smartphone technology, and the results were a little bit different than the previous studies that were actually made in laboratories or in the scientific centers. And what study did, and what we found out through this study, was that 46.9% of the time we spent, so this is the time we spent on thinking about something that is not going around us, and also on contemplating or reflecting or even regretting past, or planning, of predicting, thinking about the future. And this is very interesting research, because it went further, and this 0.9% of the time we spend on thinking about something else made us unhappy, made people unhappy. And the key here was that it didn't matter what we were thinking about. So it didn't matter whether it was a pleasant experience, neutral or unpleasant experience. What it mattered was that we were lost in our thoughts. We were kind of in this wandering mind mode. And this might be something, that Mark Twain, he said that I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened. And if you think about this, what he declared and what he said, he was right, okay? And don't get me wrong here, and don't get the study wrong, because the wandering mode is actually brilliant operational mode, brain's operational mode of human beings, and it actually allows us to plan, to reason, to learn, and to reflect. And this is a great ability. But as you can think, that very often when we are actually concentrating on something, it happens that we start having thoughts and the mind gets kind of into this wandering mode and kind of getting in a lot of different stories. And sometimes even in this great movie of your life, right? The great story of your life. And this happens at some cost. It happens at the emotional cost. So, 46.9% of time we are lost in our thoughts. So that means that our awareness is distracted by thinking. But this is also good news, because that means that we can do something about this. That we can try to find some other way, some other way of maybe living and, doing things. So I would actually like to conduct a little experiment. Okay, I'm not a scientist, but I thought this is going to be a nice idea. So what I'd like you to do, again, just stay where you are seated, and we're going to observe our minds, okay, for the next 2-3 minutes. And what I would like you to do in this quiet time, I would like you to count any thoughts, any distractions that your mind gets into, okay? So it can be any thought, any word, sentence, image that your mind creates, voice, color, whatever, okay? And count any of these distractions, and we'll see if you get any distractions or not. And what I would like you to do, sorry, because I didn't say that, I would like you to focus on just breathing, okay? So just breathing and then seeing whether there are any distractions and counting them. Okay, I hope that's clear. Sorry, just got a little bit. Okay, so I ring the bell one more time. I hope it's a nice sound via all these electronic pathways. So if you can, just close your eyes again. Or gaze. Close your eyes or just gaze softly, relax your gaze. And just focus on your breath for this very practice of this 2 minutes. And if you see any distractions, any thoughts arriving, just count them. And then come back to breathing. Okay, so let's finish this little experiment. And I actually do see the comments that appear. So if you would like to share, if you have space and courage, how many distractions, how many kind of thoughts distracting you from just a simple exercise of breathing that you counted, that you had. Okay, so if you want, you can share, and we can see it's not a competition. So just be honest, whether you kind of could count as well the thoughts, could kind of see the thoughts. It can also happen sometimes that we just get lost in counting as well of, the distractions, so it's okay. And if you feel you don't want to write it, you don't want to say it, then it's also fine. You can keep it for yourself. And I already kind of see the questions that are arriving, so this is beautiful, and thank you. And I'll try to answer this question at the end of the practice. Okay, so stay and wait for the answer. Okay, so let's see if there's any. I have to actually tell you that I was also, kind of, it's not always easy to kind of get into full kind of practice that I'm teaching, because, there's a lot of things happening in my mind as well. But, it was funny because it was kind of had this constant count in my mind, and it was quite difficult to count it. But I counted a couple of distractions in this more or less 2 minutes. Okay, so if you want to write, just write it, and let's move forward. And actually, a little bit, I want to finish this idea of a wandering mind, and I just want to kind of tell you about actually what we can think of what Buddha said. And what he said was that happiness does not depend on what you have or who you are, but it solely relies on what you think. Okay, and this is what Buddha said centuries ago, actually before this research of the wandering mind, which is an unhappy mind. So this is very interesting of this whole things and the truth that, well, Buddha actually knew. Okay, so just to a little bit maybe sum up and kind of to summarize what maybe I've just said and to add some things. So mindfulness is the present moment awareness. And it's kind of awakening, but I wouldn't say it's this huge thing of, enlightenment or something, but this is more kind of like waking up from being, on autopilot, waking up from kind of living our lives without kind of paying attention to things happening around us. And mindfulness also, if we think about this, kind of like opposite of being lost in thoughts. And it is awareness of things that are happening right now. They can happen in the present moment. The physical sensations, emotions, sounds, and thoughts. And in mindfulness practice, we very often practice either on a cushion or even lying down on a mat or bed. We practice the awareness of this, of the physical sensations, emotions, sounds, and thoughts. So these are some of the practices that we have in this repertoire of mindfulness. And mindfulness is also invitation. And it's invitation, we often in mindfulness say that we kind of invite you from the doing mode to the being mode. But I think when I look at it a little bit more, it's kind of not just living the doing and being, which is very important, but with the practice, being and doing comes together. So we are not only doing, but we are also being in what we are doing. And mindfulness is traditionally a form of meditation. It comes from the Eastern traditions, but also, as you probably know, we also have Christian meditation. And it also, and it might maybe a little bit apply to you, it's kind of like a competence that you can train, because mindfulness can be the way of living, but also mindfulness can be, a training, right, that we get. And the last one, which I think is a big word, a superpower, but I thought I'm going to share it with you and I'm going to put it in this presentation. So yes, mindfulness is the superpower, but it's the superpower that allows you to live your life, your own life. Not the life that you would like to have, your ideal life, someone else's life. No, your life. And I also want to give you my own definition, okay? Because as maybe you remember in the beginning, I always ask people, what is mindfulness for you? And there are many different mindfulness definitions. I also have one that I like to share. And for me, mindfulness is simply taking care of yourself, well, taking care of myself, and seeing and meeting my needs, and being kind of mindful to what I need, what my body, what my mind, my soul needs. Okay, so this is a little bit about mindfulness and the definitions and what it is. And I would like to tell you a little bit, but just a little bit about the science behind mindfulness, and that this is actually scientifically proven, the worth and the value and the benefits of mindfulness. And I'll be honest with you that this is quite a complex matter, and I'm also not a scientist. I'm a practitioner and I'm a teacher. So, I don't want to focus on the theory only, because we are quite limited with time today. And but I want to tell you a little bit, because I also want to practice and I want to do the end practice. But I want to tell you a little bit about science and this scientific kind of side, because this might be actually something that will encourage you, right, to take up the practice, or that will kind of, back you up in the practice, give you reason to practice. Okay, so as I mentioned before, maybe you already remember, Jon Kabat-Zinn, so he is the pioneer of mindfulness, bringing mindfulness from the Eastern tradition into the Western world. And in 1979, he opened a stress clinic, reduction clinic at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. And that was this time when they actually started because it was Jon Kabat-Zinn and his team, they actually designed 8-week course, mindfulness-based course. And they started to treat patients that suffered from the chronic stress, but also patients who suffered from the chronic pain. And what they knew as well, what they understood the worth and the value of mindfulness, but they don't want to kind of, live it and keep it as kind of, a story, mindfulness is great, just practice. They actually wanted to see, and as they had this scientific background, they wanted to see what happens in us on different levels when we start practicing, when we take up mindfulness practice. And the scientific, research and papers on mindfulness, the number is kind of like a snowball effect, because starting, in 1980s, from a couple of papers on the topic, scientific, papers published in the journals, scientific journals. And this number is like, it has kind of, as I mentioned, a snowball effect, because it kind of grew to over 1,200 peer-reviewed papers in the 2019. So, the data of the scientific investigations is becoming bigger and bigger. And over, the last 40 plus years, the scientists started to kind of try to explain how something so simple like just sitting down on a cushion, on a pillow, watching your breath and trying to be in a being mode, whatever it means for you, how this simple thing has such a tremendous effect on us, on our lives, on our mental health and health in general. And this field is developing, and we can think of mindfulness research that it actually combines a lot of different sciences, like psychology, like medicine, like health science, but also neuroscience, which is quite a new thing. And because of the technology, we can kind of now get into and study the deep levels of the human body, of the human mind, of the biology, of also the immune system and the genes. So what I also have to tell you, and kind of be honest with you, that there's a lot we don't understand about human body and a human mind, and there's still a lot to kind of discover. But what it is kind of positive and optimistic that this field is emerging, and the scientific research of mindfulness, and it looks very promising. And kind of to point a couple of things that science actually backs in for mindfulness is that the regular mindfulness training, and in the regular mindfulness training, what was researched, I'm talking about the 8-week courses. And so what we know now and what we see is that the brain can change the structure. This is so-called the neuroplasticity. And in the past, the scientists thought that this neuroplasticity, so changing the neuron pathways and changing the structure of the brain, changed only when we were children and teenagers. But what the scientists realized quite recently is that it is not the whole truth, because the brain can change through our whole life. And it can change because of some outside factors, like we start learning something new, or we have some, environmental, some kind of surrounding us experiences, and also that the brain can change because of the stress, especially chronic stress. So these are kind of the outside factors. But what the scientists realized as well is that the brain can change because of the inner factors. And this is our interpretation of what is happening to us, what is happening in our lives. So basically, it can change because of the way of thinking. And this is actually now very interesting thing, because this kind of tells us that we can choose what we want to support and what we want to pay attention and what we want to kind of cultivate, which kind of activities and which kind of experiences, maybe the positive or more pleasant or even neutral, or wherever we want to kind of cultivate the negative experiences. This all matters to us. And if you are interested in a little bit more of the science behind mindfulness, you can Google this Dr. Sarah Lazar. And she is actually a PhD, a neuroscientist at the University of Harvard. And she has been practicing yoga and meditation for, let's say, 30, I suppose, years. And she actually, before she studied it, she saw the difference in her life, and she got really interested in it, and she started to study it. And her and her team is thanks to them, we kind of know, and thanks to the research they conduct, and they mostly are using the MRI scanners and kind of seeing what is happening in the brain. And what they kind of found out in the different studies is that the brain can change, as I mentioned before. But what happens is that in parts in our brain responsible, for example, for decisions, and this is the prefrontal cortex, in the brains of meditators or people who have taken an 8-week mindfulness-based course, the gray structure of the matter of the brain changes. It gets more of the gray matter, and the other place of the brain that they saw differences is hippocampus, and this is this part of the brain that is responsible for learning, for memory, but also for the emotional regulation. And they noticed that there was more activation of the brain and more gray matter in the people that actually did meditation. So this is very interesting. And the other thing that, the science backs us up here in mindfulness is and proves the effectiveness is the stress reduction. And this is a very interesting thing because we already know that stress causes massive harm to us on biological level. And especially if we think about the brain, the chronic stress can cause many negative changes in the brain. One of them is the cell deterioration and also shrinking of the brain, of the cortex. And what we have discovered in the research was that mindfulness actually could even reverse these changes. And what we realized was that this psychological matter and this emotional matter actually made the difference. So what the scientists realized was how we perceived stress, how we looked at the stressing situations, the stressors, and also kind of our reactions to stress was what it mattered and what shifted and changed the whole thing for us. And the same, a very similar thing is that was observed with the patients of the stress clinic, the stress reduction clinic that suffered the chronic pain. A very similar thing was discovered that what happened in the mindfulness courses and after this 8-week courses and even longer was that what mattered was the perception and the attitude, our attitude or the patient's attitude towards the chronic pain. And actually the biological chronic pain, the levels of it did not change that much. But what changed was this attitude to pain. And this made a tremendous difference for the patients. Okay? And I want to tell you about a couple of more things. It's actually a whole list, as you can see. And these are the things that are more or less backed up by the science. And this is basically because we can observe these things in people who are practicing mindfulness, who are meditating, but we actually kind of not sure why it happens. And the benefits of regular mindfulness training might be, and I'm actually trying to and kind of want to highlight to you that they might be, so this is not 100% guarantee. The benefits kind of can be categorized in 3 different groups: the psychological benefits, and as I mentioned before, this helps the stress relief. Thanks to mindfulness practice, we can also see the reactions of thoughts and emotions, so we can observe them. We get into this observing attitude, and this is what can often change us, okay, makes a shift and change our attitudes. The other psychological benefit is that mindfulness can and might decrease anxiety and depression, and it can, and this is a very interesting thing because we spend some time meditating, practicing mindfulness, so we have to give time to it. But what it does, it actually gives us back the time, and it adds hours to our day, surprisingly. And the other thing that I want to mention, and I want to kind of, you understand that this list is not exhaustive, but what I want to kind of mention is that thanks to mindfulness and this mindfulness attitude, we start to have more kindness, more acceptance, and more compassion towards ourselves, but also towards other people and the outside world. And I think this is very important, this kindness and acceptance and compassion in today's world, because the world kind of gets crazy, right? The outside world, outside us, gets sometimes crazy. Right. So just to list a couple of more benefits, we have also cognitive, and so this is what we can see in our minds, in our brains. So we improve the concentration and mental clarity. We reduce that, what I mentioned already about the wandering mind. We increase the memory, so the hippocampus getting activated, and there's more neural connection there, and we boost creativity and innovation, and kind of observe the mind, kind of cultivate the observing attitude and mind. And for the physical benefits, we can observe that this helps us to reconnect with our bodies. And this is kind of a big thing because very often we ignore our bodies. We kind of, tend to neglect even our bodies by working long hours, by, not taking care of it, and our lifestyles are unfortunately very often kind of leading us to neglecting our body. And also mind is a little bit like kind of, if we're concentrating on something, very often it's possible for us to forget about the body. And mindfulness kind of brings us back to our bodies. Mindfulness can also boost the immune system. It can help lower the blood pressure. It can improve, enhance the sleep patterns, the relaxation, and also decrease the level of cortisol. And cortisol, as you may already know, is called the stress hormone. So this is really important that we can decrease the level of cortisol. Okay, so I would like to tell you a little bit now about maybe what obstacles, what things can kind of maybe happen, or the reasons why taking up anything, but especially mindfulness, can be so difficult. And I suppose it can be quite daunting, right? To just sit and meditate, right? Okay, physical activities, okay, I can do that, I can try to do that, but sitting down and doing nothing, right, no. And I suppose it can be even terrifying. because we are invited to stay with our own ourselves, stay in our own company. And this can be quite scary, right? It can also be quite demanding, physically demanding, because, very often we can't imagine, or when we start, and, we maybe start with longer meditations, like sitting meditation, that it's very hard to sit for us in one position for 20, 30, or even 1 hour. This is kind of impossible, right? What can I do in this sitting? Not being occupied, or entertained by phones or computers or TV. And what else that can kind of a little bit maybe put us off from mindfulness is that we feel that, mindfulness, when I'm just stay and or sit with me and do nothing, then it can cause boredom. And very often we are kind of anxious about boredom. We don't want to be bored, right? We want to be entertained. We want things be happening. And we, in today's world, we kind of crave distractions, crave entertainment. And, our minds are quite often used to all this world happening, all these distractions, sounds, voices, noises. And, we kind of often say that, oh yeah, I want to take up meditation, I want to try mindfulness, but just have no time, right? And this is quite interesting, I think, because if you think and look at it from mindfulness perspective, then you have nothing else than time, actually. That's what you have. And it's up to you how you're going to use it. It's up to you how you use this time that you have on the Earth planet. And the last thing that I want to kind of mention, but I don't think, again, this list is exhaustive, that sometimes, our expectations are too high. Yeah, so we feel like, yeah, I sit and I get, we get this ideal picture of us meditating. Usually we see photos of, beautiful women meditating somewhere in, on like a beach or something, right? Or monks, beautiful, meditating in a beautiful surrounding. So get this ideal way, and we also kind of get this ideal picture of, yeah, I start meditating and I get calmer and I get peaceful and so on and so on. And very often in the beginning that may not happen, that something else might happen, that I get distracted by thoughts, or actually I get bored. So, our expectations are quite high. And I actually was thinking one more thing that I didn't put on list, that we also feel sometimes that, for starting practice, I need this special cushion, and I need some, yoga pants, and, I need all this equipment, and so on and so on. And this is not true, because you can practice mindfulness everywhere, and you don't need anything, like any special equipment. You don't even maybe need a teacher. You can do it yourself. And I'll tell you in a second what you can do. And I just want to kind of emphasize that, to kind of see the benefits of mindfulness. And I don't want to sound like, mindfulness is this magical pill for everything, because it is not. But the more we practice, the more benefits we can actually see. And this is like with physical exercises, right? If we don't overdo it, and if we keep doing these physical exercises, we feel better. And the same can happen with mindfulness. But it requires from us setting some time, first of all, for the regular practice, and also exercising the muscle right, of remember or exercising, right, this access to this muscle of awareness, and also, I suppose, some discipline. Okay, so just to kind of maybe leave you with a couple of ideas what you can do. I want to tell you that there are many doors and many windows to the same house or to the same room, and this, it really depends actually on you and on kind of maybe some knowledge that you have, what can work for you. Okay, and I already saw a question from one of the person who is watching us. Hi, Clementina, right? And you ask about this, whether do you need to make a course or you can make mindfulness practice alone. And yeah, this really depends, okay? Because knowing yourself, as I mentioned, and knowing what works best for you is, I suppose, asking yourself, like, how can I do it? Okay, how can I support myself? And I want to tell you that the 10 minutes practice actually counts. And this is, again, science-based, proven that even 10 minutes a day can change the structure of our brain. And you can do it in very different ways. One of the ways is, yes, enrolling on a course. And enrolling on this something course, mindfulness-based course, with a certified teacher. This is important. And it's, I think, a good way of starting it and starting maybe your mindfulness journey. Because what mindfulness course does, it gives you the support of an experienced teacher, but also kind of like a framework of 8 weeks that you are encouraged, maybe a little bit motivated, to actually practice mindfulness. And with all the mindfulness courses that I believe there are, you actually get also the supporting, hand of the teacher, and also the materials like recordings, like videos, readings, and so on. So I think and I feel that, starting a course, as you, Clementina, asked, is actually a good way, especially if you need kind of a outside support and outside motivation of either a teacher or even a group. And the value of mindfulness course is also that it lasts 8 weeks. Usually it lasts 8 weeks. And again, this is because we need to run 2 months. This is, again, the research that is saying that to change the habits and to learn new habits, we need to run more or less 2 months to do it. So 8 weeks is perfect. And if you want to do it alone, there are, also a lot of doors and a lot of windows to do that. We got a lot of books, a lot of articles on the internet, in the bookstores, and the names that I put here are probably, just a couple of, names from the mindfulness world. But if you see any of these names, then right, this is maybe something that you can trust and something that you can, read or watch or, get to know with. And, the internet actually gives us enormous possibilities now of, either joining some online groups or watching YouTube. There's a lot of videos and there's a lot of practices on YouTube, and also applications, apps, many as well, both in English, and there are actually some Polish meditation apps if you're interested. So right, if there are any other questions, I hope that answers your question, Clementina, a little bit. So I just would like to quote a little, a quotation that I actually thought it will be very useful for our practice webinar today, and this is no mat, no lotus. And I suppose this actually really kind of gives this idea of us starting the practice, right? Because the practice, okay, may not be an easy thing to do. And if you think of the lotus flower, is that, okay, the lotus grows beautifully, right, with its beautiful colors, but it actually grows from the mud, from the underneath mud. So to kind of have something beautiful, it needs maybe some, struggle or effort or even suffering or, pain. And I suppose this is a little bit with mindfulness practice that it may not be easy. It may also be difficult to start. So this mud is kind of, around us, but it kind of leads to this beautiful flower, this beautiful lotus. So the time is kind of coming almost to the end. So I would like to finish this practice, this webinar, with a last practice, okay? With mindfulness sitting practice. So if you wish, you may want to sit on the ground, on the floor, on the carpet, maybe, sitting on some cushion, a pillow, or a folded blanket. So get yourself ready on if you want to sit on the floor, or if you wish, you may want to stay wherever you are, wherever you are. And as you can maybe see, I actually am sitting on this kind of a meditation cushion. But it doesn't mean that you actually have to run tomorrow to a shop and buy one. Yeah, you can a folded blanket or a cushion is also fine. Just making sure kind of that your knees are not too high and maybe they're on the level of your hips. And if this is not possible, then actually you can stay on a chair or armchair or wherever you are comfortable. So, with this outside world happening, around us, behind us, let's get into a little bit of stillness. If you wish, you may want to close your eyes. And if you're leaning on a chair or something like wall or bed, then maybe you want to straighten your spine, straighten your back a little bit, to kind of get into this position of mindful alertness. So straightening your spine and maybe imagining that like someone is pulling, but really gently and really softly, your head towards the ceiling, towards the sky. And if possible, also dropping your shoulders, relaxing your shoulders. And putting your hands with either palms down or palms up into the direction of the sky, of the ceiling. And also with the breath, kind of trying maybe to see if you're not clenching anywhere, if you kind of not, hunching, and kind of having this movement of opening your chest. In mindfulness, we often talk about this dignity, so sitting with dignity. So try to sit with dignity, whatever it means to you. And allow yourself to set into this position, into this present moment. And if you wish, focusing your attention and directing your awareness into the breathing process once again today. So maybe feeling the air coming through your nostrils or through your mouth. So feeling the inhale. And then observing the exhale. So staying with your inhale and exhale for a little bit longer, for a couple of more breaths. And then maybe also kind of noticing the pause that we may notice between the inhale and the exhale, and this little pause, the little break between the exhale and a new inhale. And if you notice your mind wandering, getting somewhere out of this practice, out of this task, then it's fine. This is okay. This is actually what is mind quite often doing to us. But we have a choice, you have a choice, and if you notice your mind wandering, then what you can do is simply and gently just bring it back to your breath and to the present moment. And it can happen during the meditation, during the practice, that your mind will wander off many times. And this is fine, this is okay. So if you wish, you can just bring your mind back to the breath as many times as you can and as it is possible for you. So breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. If you wish, you can support yourself, you can aid yourself a little bit by just saying, breathing in when you take a breath, and saying, breathing out when the air leaves your body, when you exhale. And you can continue doing that for a little bit longer. You can also try to do this evening, maybe after the webinar, before you go to sleep, or tomorrow morning, or any time that you wish and you remember about this simple breath practice, a simple breath work. And we started with the questioning ourselves, how are you? How am I actually? So you can finish this practice with, again, checking with yourself and asking, how am I feeling now? And to finish, you can repeat this little mantra. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So maybe thanking the world for the opportunity of being here, of practicing today, or having some thanks to yourself for actually finding time, feeling this gratitude towards yourself for finding and sticking to our webinar today. Or thanking for, feeling gratitude for anything that you wish to have. And when you hear the sound of the bell, that will mean that this practice comes to an end. So thank you for coming today. Thank you for practicing with me.